12 women, all members of Iran's Basij resistance force. They did the unthinkable. They defected. One brutal night changed everything. The uniform became a shroud. Their duty turned to poison. They faced an impossible choice: uphold a lie, or abandon everything for a truth that could cost them their lives. This is their untold story. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Subscribe to hear more testimonies the world needs to know. It all started like this. It was spring, 1401, a warm Tuesday in Tehran, in the bustling Vanak district. Shirin Golshani, then 29, felt a profound sense of purpose. The scent of jasmine and exhaust fumes mingled in the air, a familiar perfume of her beloved city. She walked past the university, past the crowded shops, her chador rustling with each determined step. Shirin was a sergeant in the Basij resistance force, a guardian of the revolution's sacred values, patrolling these very streets. Her belief was not just abstract ideology, it was the bedrock of her existence, forged in family stories and the very air she breathed. She remembered her father, Dariush, a retired history teacher with hands calloused from years of gripping chalk and prayer beads. He would sit on their threadbare Persian rug, a steaming glass of chai in his hand, and tell Shirin and her younger sister, Zara, stories of a different Iran. Not the Shah's decadent, Western puppeted Iran, but a land of dignity and faith reclaimed by the revolution. He spoke of how America had plundered their resources, corrupted their youth, and insulted their Islamic honor. America, he'd say, his voice thick with a teacher's conviction, is the great Satan, not because they are inherently evil, but because they seek to lead us astray from Allah's path, from our true selves. He quoted Hafez sometimes, lines about the hypocrisy of outward piety concealing inner corruption, but always in the context of Western influence on pre-revolutionary society, never on the Islamic Republic itself. Her mother, Farah, a seamstress whose nimble fingers could transform a simple piece of fabric into a masterpiece, reinforced these lessons with practical examples. She taught Shirin the art of modesty, not as a burden, but as a shield. A woman's honor, Farah would explain, meticulously folding a bolt of rich crimson velvet, is her most precious possession. The hijab protects it, just as the walls of a home protect its family. Shirin believed this with every fiber of her being. She believed they were saving Iranian women from the emptiness of Western materialism, from objectification, from a life devoid of spiritual meaning. Her role in the Basij, enforcing proper Islamic dress and conduct, was an act of mercy, a sacred duty. Childhood memories were intertwined with these teachings. Shirin remembered the smell of gourmet sabzi simmering on the stove on Fridays, the rhythmic call to prayer from the mosque down their street, the joyful chaos of Nowruz, the Persian New Year, with its spread of Haft Sin symbols. She remembered the solemnity of Ashura, the passion plays retelling the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, her small hand clutching her father's as he wept silently. These were not mere rituals. They were the heartbeat of a nation striving for justice, for God's approval. She saw the Basij and the IRGC as the unwavering guardians of this heart. She saw herself as one of them. Sometimes a flicker of doubt would pierce the armor of her conviction. She'd see Zara, her sister, at 22, secretly reading forbidden poetry, her eyes alight with a hunger for a different kind of beauty. Zara, who dreamed of being a poet, who kept a small, worn copy of Foro Farrokhzad's verses hidden beneath her mattress, poetry filled with yearning and defiance that Shirin had been taught to view as dangerously liberal. Shirin would catch a glimpse of a young woman on patrol, her headscarf slipping, a flash of irritation in her eyes, not shame. And for a fleeting second, Shirin would wonder, are we truly helping them? Or are we just making them afraid? But the thought would vanish, quickly extinguished by the fire of her faith. It was a test, she'd tell herself. Satan's whispers. These women, like Zara, needed guidance, needed protection from themselves, from the insidious whispers of Western culture seeping in through illegal satellite dishes and encrypted messaging apps. The revolution had saved Iran from ruin. It had given them dignity. It had given her purpose. Her husband, Reza, 30, worked long hours at the oil refinery in Ray. He was a quiet man, but his faith was as strong as hers. He dreamed of opening a small Nunvai bakery someday, filling the streets with the smell of fresh Barbary bread. He supported her work, understanding its importance. Her mother, Farah, worried about Shirin's safety on the streets, but never questioned her mission. Her father, Dariush, swelled with pride. Shirin knew they all looked up to her. She thought of them often. Reza, her rock. Zara, whose poetic soul needed careful tending. Her mother, Farah, who taught patience. Her father, Dariush, whose stories shaped her world. They were her family, her reason. And her work, her role in the Basij, was to ensure their world, their Iran, remained pure and strong. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the Tehran sky in hues of fiery orange and deep violet, Shirin knelt for her evening prayers. She felt nothing but pride, a quiet certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Tomorrow, another day of safeguarding Iran awaited. September 16th, 2022. Amini Street, Tehran. 11:40 p.m. The night air was thick, heavy with the scent of dust and exhaust. Shirin's patrol van, a battered white Peugeot Pars, rumbled slowly through the narrow street. Her uniform felt heavy. The radio crackled with static. Inside, the usual faces. Zara, stern and unyielding, clutching her walkie-talkie. Nargis, younger, eyes darting, always a little too eager. And the driver, Mina, silent, chewing gum. Shirin sat beside Zara, scanning the dimly lit street. Her senses were alert. This was routine. This was duty. Ahead, a group of young women laughed, their voices echoing in the late hour. One of them, perhaps 20 years old, wore her chador loosely, strands of dark hair escaping onto her forehead. Her laughter carried a defiant edge. Shirin's heart gave a familiar thump, not anger, but a sense of responsibility. She needs guidance. "Stop the vehicle," Zara ordered, her voice sharp. Mina braked abruptly. The van jolted. Shirin stepped out first. The asphalt was still warm. "Sister," Shirin called, her voice firm but even. The laughter died. The group tensed. The young woman with the loose chador turned. Her eyes were defiant. "Your hijab," Shirin said, pointing subtly. "It is not proper." "It is my choice," the woman retorted, her voice trembling slightly. "It is the law," Zara interjected, stepping forward. Her tone brooked no argument. "Leave me alone." The young woman's face flushed with anger. A small crowd began to gather. Hushed whispers. Zara moved quickly. She grabbed the woman's arm. The woman struggled. She pulled away. "Do not resist," Zara commanded. Her grip tightened. Shirin watched, a familiar tightness in her chest. This was always the difficult part. Nargis moved to assist. The young woman was strong. She fought back. Her purse flew open. Contents spilled onto the street. A small, hand-carved wooden bird. It rolled under the van. Zara wrestled the woman. Her foot slipped. The woman stumbled. She fell hard. Her head struck the curb. A sickening thud. Silence. Absolute silence. The crowd gasped. Shirin froze. Her breath hitched. Blood began to spread. A dark stain on the gray concrete. Her training screamed, "Secure the scene. Control the crowd." But her heart screamed something else. Nargis stared, wide-eyed. Mina gripped the steering wheel. Shirin knelt. Her hands trembled. She saw the woman's eyes. Fixed. Empty. A thin, crimson trickle snaked from her temple. This was not right. This was not the plan. The woman was not resisting now. She was still. Her name, Shirin would later learn, was Masa Amini. The young woman's chador, dislodged in the struggle, lay tangled around her head, now soaked in blood. The stark contrast between the pristine white fabric and the crimson was horrifying. This fabric, meant to symbolize purity and protection, was now stained with life itself. Shirin stared at it, the fabric rippling slightly in the breeze. This was the symbolic object, not something she owned, but something that represented everything she believed in, now horrifyingly transformed. Her mind raced, comparing this brutal reality to the comforting narratives she had been taught. 1. We bring order and safety. But chaos erupted here. Fear, not safety, filled the air. 2. We protect women's honor. This woman lay lifeless. Her dignity was shattered. 3. The Basij are beloved guardians. The crowd stared with horror, not gratitude. Their faces held accusation. 4. The West lies about our justice. But this was undeniable. Visible. Happening right here. 5. Our laws are divinely inspired, always righteous. Where was the divine justice in this? Zara's voice cut through the stunned silence. She resisted. She fell. Her voice was too loud, too forced. It was a lie. Shirin had seen it all. Zara had pushed. The woman had fallen. It was an accident, yes, but caused directly by their actions, not a fall of her own accord. This was not God's will. This was human error, human brutality. The crowd stirred, whispers growing louder, angrier. "They killed her," someone hissed. "They killed her just for her hair." Shirin looked from Mahsa's still form to Zara's hardened face, then to the terrified faces in the crowd. She looked at the blood on the street, then at her own uniform. Her stomach churned. The scent of dust and jasmine was now acrid, sickly sweet, mixed with something metallic. It was the smell of fear, the smell of death. This was not supposed to happen like this. Nargis, her voice a fragile whisper, finally voiced what everyone was thinking, the terrible truth that no one dared speak aloud. The next few hours were a blur of official reports, hushed conversations, and thinly veiled threats. Mahsa Amini was dead. The official narrative was swiftly constructed. A sudden heart attack, a pre-existing condition, an unfortunate accident caused by her own resistance. Shirin was ordered to sign a statement, a pre-written account that minimized their role, that absolved them. Her hand hovered over the paper, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She signed it. The pen felt heavy, a weight of complicity, but the image of Mahsa's eyes, wide and vacant, burned behind her own eyelids. That night, well after midnight, Shirin found herself in a deserted alleyway behind the Imamzadeh Saleh Mosque in Tajrish. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of incense and damp earth. 6 women, all from various Basij units, all colleagues, were already there, huddled in the shadow of a decaying brick wall. Mina, the driver, rubbed her arms, her face pale. Nargis, younger than the others, clutched a crumpled tissue, her eyes red-rimmed. Zara was not there. Shirin knew she wouldn't be. Zara was already fully invested in the lie. "This is not our fault," one of the women, Parisa, said, her voice tight with suppressed fear. Parisa had been with Zara's unit for years, a true believer, often the first to condemn any deviation from protocol. She resisted. The official report says she had a condition. "Do you believe that, Parisa?" Shirin asked, her voice low, raspy. The words felt foreign. Parisa hesitated. Her eyes flickered away. "We must believe it. For the revolution. For the revolution," Shirin repeated, a bitter taste in her mouth. "Or for ourselves." Another woman, Roya, her face etched with worry, spoke up. "My cousin. She works in the hospital. She says Mahsa's injuries, they don't match a simple fall. A blow to the head." Roya's voice was barely a whisper. "Rumors," Parisa cut in too quickly. "Baseless rumors." "Are they?" Nargis sobbed quietly. "I saw it. I saw her fall. I saw the blood." A heavy silence descended. The only sounds were the distant drone of traffic and the rustle of a stray cat in the rubbish bins. Shirin took a deep breath. Her decision was made. "I cannot do this anymore," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. "I cannot enforce a law that kills our own daughters. I cannot serve a system that lies about it. My conscience, it is broken." The silence deepened, thick and suffocating. This was blasphemy. This was treason. "What are you saying, Shirin?" Mina asked, her voice trembling. "I am saying," Shirin looked at each face, her gaze unwavering, "that I am leaving. I am leaving Iran." The shock was palpable. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then, slowly, a hand rose. It was Nargis. Her fingers trembled as she held it aloft. I cannot stay either," she choked out. "I keep seeing her face. I can't sleep." Another hand rose. Mina. Her eyes were fixed on the ground. "My brother. He's arrested for protests. They said he was just making trouble. But if they can kill a girl in the street, what will they do to him?" Then Roya. "My sister. She's an artist. She's always saying we live in a cage. I always told her she was wrong. But now," she trailed off, her eyes shining with unshed tears. One by one, hands rose. 12 women. Shirin, Nargis, Mina, Roya, and 8 others. Zara's former lieutenants, instructors, patrol officers, all bound by the same uniform, now broken by the same horror. Parisa remained seated, her face a mask of grief and fury. You are abandoning your faith, your country. They will call you traitors. Perhaps, Shirin said, her voice calm. But what is a country if it devours its own? What is faith if it demands silence in the face of injustice? A wave of profound sadness washed over Shirin. It wasn't just the regime she was grieving. It was Iran itself, the ancient land of poets and prophets, of lush gardens and snow-capped mountains. The Iran of her father's stories. The Iran that smelled of saffron and roses and the sea. The Iran they were now forced to flee, not for an ideological quarrel, but because it had become a tomb for its own children. She thought of Zara, her beautiful, defiant Zara, whose dreams were as vibrant and fragile as the spring blossoms. Shirin could not bear the thought of Zara becoming another Masa. Her love for Zara, her fear for her, was the steel spine of her sudden resolution. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in soft hues of rose and lavender, kissing the rooftops of Tehran. The city, usually a vibrant tapestry of sounds and smells, felt strangely muted, distant. Shirin stood on her small balcony in Vanak, looking out over the sleeping city for what she knew would be the last time. The air was cool, carrying the faint, sweet scent of honeysuckle from a neighbor's garden. She took a deep, shaky breath, trying to imprint every detail onto her memory. The distant silhouette of the Alborz Mountains, the familiar pattern of brick buildings, the quiet hum that always preceded the city's waking roar. This was home. This was goodbye. The plan coalesced in hurried whispers, exchanged in hushed phone calls, via encrypted telegram channels, and during seemingly innocuous trips to the bustling Tajrish Bazaar. Shirin took the lead, her quiet resolve hardening into steely determination. The women pooled their resources. Some had saved small caches of US dollars, folded meticulously, and tucked into the spines of old books. Others had gold coins, Bahari Azadan coins, sewn into the lining of winter coats, their weight a comforting yet terrifying presence. Shirin had liquidated her meager savings, converting Iranian rials into dollars through an underground broker, the transaction conducted in a dusty, dimly lit office in a back alley off Valier Asser Street. Each bill felt like a piece of her soul, traded for a chance at freedom. Forged documents were the next hurdle. A contact, a former colleague from a different Basij unit who had quietly grown disillusioned, connected them with a network specializing in such things. The process was clandestine, expensive. They needed travel permits, identity cards that would pass cursory inspection. The faces on the new IDs were subtly altered, new names, new birthplaces. Shirin became Fatemeh Karimi, born in Mashhad, a pilgrimage city, a cruel irony. The new documents felt fragile in her hands, a flimsy shield against the might of the state. The escape route itself was treacherous, overland, through the rugged Zagros Mountains, into Iraqi Kurdistan. This was the preferred, albeit dangerous path for many seeking refuge. The network was Kurdish, known for its efficiency and deep knowledge of the borderlands. Their primary guide was to be a man named Aso, a name whispered with reverence and caution, a ghost of the mountains, known for never losing a group. Coordinates were sent via telegram, a series of seemingly random numbers that, once decoded, would lead them to a remote meeting point near Sardasht in West Azerbaijan province. The fee, $500 per person, to be paid in full upon successful crossing. It was an astronomical sum, but their lives depended on it. Then, the unexpected. A phone call late one night. Mina's voice, trembling, barely audible. They arrested Zara. Not their Zara, their friend, but the Zara, the hardline commander, their former superior. News had spread. Protests erupted across the country, fueled by Masa's death. The regime was cracking down hard. Anyone suspected of dissent, even internal doubts, was being targeted. The arrest of Zara was a stark warning. Shirin knew what it meant. Their window was closing. The timeline had to accelerate. What was planned for weeks needed to happen in days. That same evening, Shirin stood in her bedroom, the room she had shared with Reza for years. The air was heavy with unspoken goodbyes. Reza was at the refinery, working his usual night shift. She had told him she was visiting her mother for a few days, a common enough occurrence. The lie tasted bitter. Her eyes swept across the room, the embroidered cushions on their bed, the small bookshelf filled with her father's history tomes, the faint scent of Reza's cologne lingering on his clothes in the closet. She had to choose. What to take, what to leave. Her gaze fell on her small, hand-painted wooden prayer box, the Sanduche e Namaz, a gift from her grandmother. Inside, the worn turba and a few dried rose petals, sacred relics of a faith now fractured. It represented everything she had been, everything she was leaving behind. It was too heavy, not in weight, but in memory. She left it on her bedside table, a silent testament to a path she could no longer walk. Her eyes then caught sight of a small, framed photograph tucked behind a larger picture of her and Reza. It was Zara, at 15, laughing freely, her hair cascading around her shoulders, a vibrant contrast to the veiled women Shirin now saw everywhere. It was a photo from before Zara started wearing the hijab regularly, a fleeting glimpse of pure, unburdened joy. Shirin carefully removed it, sliding it into the inner pocket of her jacket. This was her anchor. This was her reason. This was the future she fought for. She closed the door softly, leaving her old life behind, stepping into the terrifying unknown. The old Peugeot Pars, the same model as their patrol vehicle, but this one worn and nondescript, rattled along the cracked asphalt of a remote road. It was close to midnight. The air was cold, biting. The 12 women huddled inside, their faces grim, their bodies tense. Mina drove, her hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Nargis sat beside her, whispering prayers. Shirin sat in the back, her eyes scanning the dark, undulating landscape. Every shadow seemed to conceal a threat. Every distant light could be an enemy. Mini Crisis 1, the IRGC checkpoint. The first crisis hit less than an hour into their journey. Headlights in the distance, a flashing blue beacon, an IRGC checkpoint. Shirin's heart hammered against her ribs. Too soon, too fast. Mina gripped the wheel. Her breath hitched. "Documents ready," Shirin murmured, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The vehicle slowed. Dust swirled. A uniformed guard stepped into the road. His face was obscured by shadow. He waved them to a stop. His rifle hung casually. Mina killed the engine. The silence was deafening. Another guard approached the passenger side. He tapped the window. Nargis rolled it down. A blast of cold air. "Where are you going?" The guard's voice was flat, bored. "To visit family in Sanandaj," Nargis recited, her voice a little too high. "Travel permits." He extended a gloved hand. Nargis fumbled with the forged papers. Her fingers shook. The guard took the stack. He peered at each photo. He scanned each name. Shirin watched him, her breath shallow. He paused on Shirin's photo. "Fateme Karimi," he read aloud. His eyes narrowed. "This is it," Shirin thought. "We are caught." He looked from the photo to Shirin. His gaze was cold, penetrating. Shirin met his stare. She forced a neutral expression. "You look familiar," he said slowly. Shirin's mind raced. He recognized the uniform, not the face. "Many women wear the chador, brother," Shirin said, her voice calm, respectful. "Perhaps you confuse me with someone else." He grunted. He flipped through the rest of the permits. The moments stretched. An eternity passed. He handed the papers back. "Continue your journey, but be swift." "Thank you, brother," Nargis said, relief flooding her voice. Mina started the engine. It sputtered, then caught. They pulled away. The blue light faded behind them. Shirin let out a shaky breath. They were through. False resolution trap 1. They thought the worst was over, but it was just the beginning. The drive continued, silent save for the engine's drone. Each woman lost in her own fear, her own prayers. They drove for hours, deeper into the Zagros foothills. The paved roads gave way to rough tracks, then to nothing but a faint trail of compacted earth and rock. The air grew thinner, colder. The mountains rose around them, dark, imposing sentinels under a sliver of moon. Mini Crisis 2, the deserted trail and the lost path. The Peugeot began to struggle. The engine coughed. Steam rose from under the hood. Mina cursed under her breath. "Engine's overheating," she muttered. "Can't go on much further." They were in the middle of nowhere. No lights, no signs of life. Just the vast, silent desert. Shirin looked at the barren landscape. We have to abandon the vehicle. They piled out, 12 women in the freezing night. The cold bit instantly, seeping through their thin jackets. They grabbed their small bags, wrapped scarves tighter around their faces. "Where is Aso?" Roya asked, her teeth chattering. "He was supposed to meet us here." The telegram coordinates had led them to a desolate, rocky outcrop. There was no one. Panic began to set in. Whispers turned to desperate questions. Did we get the coordinates wrong? Is he late? What if he doesn't come? The wind howled. It tugged at their chadors. It whipped dust into their faces. Shirin pulled out her small, encrypted satellite phone. No signal. Of course. She remembered Aso's instructions. If the meeting point is empty, follow the old shepherd's trail, due west towards the Twin Peaks. I will find you. We walk, Shirin announced. Her voice brooked no argument. West, towards the peaks. They began their march. The ground was uneven, sharp rocks cutting into their flimsy shoes. The darkness was absolute, save for the faint starlight. Every step was an effort. Every breath burned in their lungs. Hours passed. The cold was unbearable. Their legs ached. Their throats were raw from thirst. One of the younger women, Fereshte, stumbled. She cried out. She fell to her knees. I can't, she whimpered, tears freezing on her cheeks. I can't go on. Shirin knelt beside her. Yes, you can. We walk together. We stay together. She helped Fereshte to her feet. Shirin put Fereshte's arm over her shoulder. Lean on me, she ordered. Her own strength was failing. The others, despite their exhaustion, rallied. They formed a chain, holding on to each other, pulling the weakest along. They pushed on, a silent, determined procession against the vast, indifferent landscape. The Twin Peaks remained distant, looming specters. Mini Crisis 3, the mountain pass and dehydration. They ascended into the mountains. The air grew even thinner. The ground became steeper, covered in loose scree. One wrong step could send them tumbling into the abyss. The temperature dropped further, below freezing. The lack of water began to take its toll. Their lips were cracked. Their mouths were dry. Water, Nargis rasped, her voice a barely audible croak. Please, just a drop. They had rationed their meager supply, but it was long gone. Shirin felt a burning pain in her temples. Her vision blurred. Roya, usually so strong, swayed. She gripped Parvin's arm. Then, a figure appeared on the ridge above them, a silhouette against the pre-dawn sky. All 12 women froze. Their hearts stopped. Basij? IRGC? They thought the mission was over. The figure raised a hand. He spoke in a low, guttural voice. Kurdish. Aso, Shirin breathed. A wave of profound relief washing over her. Aso descended. A lean, wiry man with eyes that seemed to have seen 1,000 mountain nights. He carried a large goatskin waterskin. He offered it to Shirin first. She took a long, desperate gulp. The water was cold, pure, life itself. She passed it around. Each woman drank deeply, gratefully. Aso spoke, in broken Farsi. Too many eyes. The trail is watched. We take a different path. He led them away from the original route, through a hidden gorge, a narrow, winding defile that was almost impassable. The path was barely wide enough for one person, sheer rock faces on either side. It was slower, far more arduous, but hidden from any patrols. False resolution trap. 2. They found Aso, but the path ahead was even harder. Mini Crisis 4. The scent of pine and the border dogs. They walked for what felt like an eternity, through the gorge, then across another ridge. The sky was now a pale gray. The first hint of light appeared on the eastern horizon. The air shifted. A faint, earthy smell reached Shirin's nostrils. Pine. They were nearing the border, nearing the forests of Iraqi Kurdistan. Then, a low growl, a distant bark. Dog patrol. The border guards often used trained dogs to track escapees. Shirin stopped dead. Her blood ran cold. Aso cursed. Run, he whispered, pushing them forward. Run and scatter. Meet at the old pine tree. Panic erupted. The women broke formation. They ran. They stumbled. Shirin ran, her lungs burning, her muscles screaming. The sound of the dogs grew closer. They are on us. They will catch us. She scrambled over rocks. She ducked under low branches. A roar of voices. Flashlights swept the darkness. She heard Nargis cry out. Shirin didn't look back. She couldn't. She had to keep moving. She found herself alone, breathless, hidden behind a thick cluster of pine trees. The scent of pine was overwhelming, sharp and fresh. She heard the dogs barking, closer now, then fading into the distance. Had they passed her? After what felt like an hour, the sounds died down. Silence returned. Shirin slowly emerged. The forest was eerily still. "Nargis," she whispered. "Mina? Roya?" No answer. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced her. Had they been caught? Then, a rustle, a low whistle. Aso. He appeared from the shadows, carrying a small satchel. One by one, the other women emerged, pale and terrified. But all accounted for. Narges had a scraped knee, but she was there. Aso spoke, his voice grim. "They are close. We move now. No talking. The kindness. Interrupt." They walked for another hour, moving deeper into the pine forest. The sun was now a weak glow on the horizon. The trees were dense, their needles soft underfoot. They were exhausted, defeated. Shirin felt a sudden, sharp hunger pain. They hadn't eaten in almost 24 hours. Then, a small makeshift shelter appeared through the trees. Smoke curled from a tiny chimney. "A shepherd," Aso whispered. "He is trusted." They approached cautiously. A grizzled old man with a kind, weathered face emerged. He wore a traditional Kurdish tunic and felt hat. He carried a shepherd's crook. He looked at the 12 exhausted women, their faces streaked with dirt and fear. He asked no questions. He simply gestured inside. His wife, a small stooped woman, had a fire blazing. A large pot simmered over the flames. She handed them each a bowl of hot ash, thick soup, and a piece of fresh, nanmu, bread. The taste was incredible. Warm, nourishing, a burst of flavor after endless tasteless fear. Shirin felt tears prick her eyes as she ate. It was an act of profound, unexpected human kindness, given without expectation, without judgment. In the heart of the mountains, a moment of grace. They ate in silence, the warmth of the fire and the food slowly bringing life back to their frozen bodies. This short respite, this anonymous act of mercy, was a beacon in the darkness. The crossing. Refreshed, if only slightly, they set off again, Aso leading the way. The sun was higher now, filtering through the pines. The air grew warmer. "The border is ahead," Aso said, pointing to a barely visible line of stones, half buried in the undergrowth. Shirin looked. It was nothing. A simple demarcation. Not a wall, not a fence, just a line. Her heart hammered. This was it, the final steps. They walked silently, each footfall deliberate. Each woman carried the weight of her past, her fear, her hope. Shirin stepped over the line of stones. The sensation was subtle, yet profound. A shift in the earth beneath her feet. A release of tension in her shoulders she hadn't even known she was holding. It was like shedding a skin. It was leaving. She took a deep breath. The air tasted different. Not of exhaust and jasmine and fear, but of pine and damp earth and something else. A faint, almost imperceptible scent of possibility. A few minutes later, Aso led them out of the forest. Below them lay a small, bustling village. Lights twinkled. Voices drifted up, speaking a mix of Kurdish and Farsi, but with a different lilt, of freedom in the intonation. Shirin heard music. Not the state-sanctioned anthems or somber religious chants, but rhythmic, joyful Kurdish music, played openly, carried on the breeze. It was the first sound of freedom. The first thing she truly registered was the easy, unrestrained movement of women in the village square, some with headscarves, some without, all moving with a casual grace that spoke of choice, not coercion. All 12 accounted for, nobody left behind. 3 days later, Shirin stood in a busy marketplace in Erbil, Iraqi Kurdistan. The cacophony of sounds was overwhelming. Vendors hawking goods in a mix of Kurdish, Arabic, and Farsi. The laughter of children, the blare of car horns. The air was filled with the scent of spices, grilled meat, and strong coffee, a vibrant contrast to the controlled, often stale atmosphere of Tehran's official spaces. The buildings were modern, yet traditional, adorned with colorful mosaics and intricate carvings, reflecting a culture that seemed to embrace its identity openly. And everywhere, women, moving freely, their hair uncovered, flowing in the breeze, or loosely veiled by choice. The sheer, uninhibited motion of life here was a stark physical detail that caused a profound emotional collapse within Shirin. A wave of exhaustion, of grief, of unimaginable relief washed over her. Her knees buckled slightly. That evening, they gathered in a modest guest house, a single room rented for the 12 of them. They shared a communal meal provided by their host. Enormous platters of dolma, vine leaves stuffed with rice and meat, fragrant and savory, and bowls of creamy yogurt, alongside fresh lavash bread. The food was simple, yet it tasted like a feast. Nargis, usually so quiet, picked at a dolma, then suddenly burst into tears, silent, racking sobs. She wasn't crying from sadness, but from the simple act of eating without fear, without the gnawing anxiety that had become their constant companion. Shirin reached across the worn table and squeezed Nargis's hand. Later that day, a local Kurdish aid worker, a woman named Shilan, met with them. She spoke fluent Farsi, her smile warm and genuine. She didn't question them about their past, didn't ask about their roles, didn't demand explanations. She simply offered them chairs, strong chai, and a listening ear. She looked directly into Shirin's eyes, her gaze full of empathy. "Welcome," she said, her voice soft. "You are safe now." Then she asked, "What are your names?" It was such a simple question, yet it was the first time in days Shirin had been asked her true name. Not Fatima Karimi, not Sergeant Shirin, but Shirin. It was a profound dignity moment, a recognition of their humanity. One of the women, Parvin, a soft-spoken instructor from their unit, stood by the window overlooking the bustling street. Slowly, tentatively, her hands reached up. She untied the knot of her chador. She pulled it down, revealing her dark, braided hair. Then, with a deep, shaky breath, she removed her headscarf. She let it fall to the floor. Her fingers ran through her hair, a gesture of almost childlike wonder. She looked out at the street, a small smile gracing her lips, then turned back to them, her eyes shining. It was a tangible, sensory freedom, a moment of reclaiming herself. Shirin watched Parvin, the small wooden prayer box, the sanduche-e-namaz, that Shirin had left on her bedside table in Tehran, burned in her memory. Here, in a small shop across the street, she saw a simple, brightly painted wooden bird, perhaps a child's toy. It wasn't sacred. It didn't hold relics. But it represented a similar craftsmanship, a simple beauty, untainted by expectation or ideology. It was a counterpoint, a new beginning. 2 years later, Istanbul, Turkey, autumn 1403. Shirin walks along the Bosporus, the crisp air carrying the scent of the sea and roasted chestnuts. She works as a translator for a small NGO, helping other Iranian refugees navigate their new lives. It's a modest income, but it's honest work. She lives in a quiet neighborhood in Üsküdar, overlooking the shimmering strait, a world away from the crowded streets of Vanik. The women of their group have scattered, some to Germany, some to Canada, but they stay in touch through encrypted calls, their shared trauma and triumph binding them forever. Zara, her younger sister, is still in Tehran. She's studying literature at the university, as defiant as ever, though Shirin knows she must be careful. Phone calls are brief, veiled. "How is Baba?" Shirin asks, her voice tight with suppressed fear. "And Mama?" "They are well. Kahar June," Zara replies, her voice sounding distant, thin. "Baba still reads his Hafez. Mama still worries." Shirin aches for them, for Reza, her husband, still working at the refinery. His dream of a bakery still deferred. She knows the calls are monitored. She cannot say what she truly wants to say. Are you safe? Are you truly free? The fear is a constant dull throb beneath her ribs. Iran. She misses it with a profound, aching sorrow. Not the regime, never the regime, but the land. She misses the smell of spring blossoms in Darband, the majesty of the Alborz mountains, the warmth of Nowruz celebrations with her family around the Haft scene. She pictures the ancient ruins of Persepolis, imagining the whispers of history carried on the wind. It hurts to know she cannot return, that her home is now a place of danger, a memory. The longing is a phantom limb, always there. To those still inside Iran, risking everything for a flicker of freedom, your courage is seen, your voices are heard. Do not lose hope. The world is watching. And to those who live in freedom, who wake each day to choices they take for granted, feel the air, say what you think, wear what you choose. That freedom, that simple, undeniable dignity, is not a given. It is a fragile, precious gift that others die for every single day. Would you have risked everything for a chance at that freedom? Tell me in the comments.